All right. Welcome to Handshake and a Smile. This is our very first episode, and I'm so excited. When I started the idea behind this podcast, you obviously start to think about guests that you want to have on and people you want to talk to. And looking at the order of who should come on first, and with the theme of the podcast, Handshake and a Smile, I thought to myself, the perfect first guest is the most important handshake that I've ever had in my life, and that's my wife, Wendy Reeser. So really excited to have you join us today as our first guest, Wendy. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. The design of this is really just to talk casually, have, real conversations that resonate with people that aren't scripted, that are really focused on, what our messaging is. And that's bringing back a little bit of the old school into, new world ideas that are happening in our world today that are taking shape and moving 100 miles an hour, but not forgetting, kind of where previous generations came from and being able to, really use some of those key teachings and learnings and apply them to today, because I don't think they ever go bad, if you will. So as we kick this first show off, I'd really like our audience to, kind of get to know you. Tell us a little bit about Wendy Reeser and where, I know it's a tall order. There's a lot to say, but, tell us a little bit about, your background and, what you do today and what you've done over the years.
Okay, that's kind of how far back do you want me to go?
Well, I think I guess just introducing, your story a little bit from, maybe encapsulating a little bit of, different parts of your life, where you're from, things of that nature, where a little bit about your story.
Okay. Well, I'm your wife,
Yes,
Wendy
of course.
Reeser. I'm Nicaraguan.
Mm-hmm.
We came to this country when I was 4 years old to escape a war.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always in the heart of who I am at the very core. And I was raised by a single mom. She raised my sister and I basically just off of hard work and dedication and, a never quit mentality.
Mm-hmm.
She instilled in us that hard work philosophy from a very young age. So I guess that was always who I am at the core of it all. But with that being said, I have a bleeding heart. I am a person who's always wanted to help anybody and everybody. So fresh out of high school, I wanted to go to college and study psychology with an emphasis in child psychology and child development. So I went to San Jose State and got my degree in child psych,
Mm-hmm.
with a minor in child development and sociology. Worked in social services for several years, always doing group home stuff, residential facility stuff, and that was really a passion. Doesn't pay well.
Right.
Doesn't pay well, but really at the end of the day, I was happy. Got married,
Mm-hmm.
had two amazing...
Well, you got a winner there, huh?
I got a winner.
Wow.
A winner, yeah. Had two amazing kids. Decided that was what I was going to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have been a stay-at-home mom and wife for 22 years.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that this year in September we'll have been together for 30 years. Can you believe that?
No.
Married for 27 next month. 30
Yes.
long years. It seems like a life sentence. But I'm kidding. It's been the best time of my life, that's for sure. And, I want to go back real quick. You mentioned when you're going to college and, that was, I believe, the first person in your family to achieve that. Talk to me a little bit about like what was going through your mind in terms of, goals that you had for yourself before life kind of took on, what it did and the path that you went down. Like when you were, leaving Southern California to drive up to San Jose, what was going through your head in terms of like, your dreams for your degree or things of that nature?
Well, to start, I'm not the first person in my entire family to go to college. I just was the first one that started of our generation in the U.S. So, I come from people that were, my grandfather was a doctor. My father has a master's degree.
Right.
This is not wasn't new to our family that people saw college as the way, as the path. But of course, in our generation, I was probably the first one to start. My goal headed to college was never to be a stay-at-home mom. It was never to be a stay-at-home wife. I had a very clear-cut goal to get a license to do therapy. My main goal was to do therapy with children. I really wanted to be able to use both English and Spanish and be able to work with kids that maybe didn't speak English or came over here as immigrants because of one reason or another, whether it was war, whether it was, just looking for a better place, a better life. And I thought, I can relate to these kids. And so this is what I'm going to do. So it was never my intent to not continue going to school.
Right.
To be honest, I'm a person who loves to learn. So I've said this several times, and I've said this to my kids, and I've said this to you probably many a times. If there was a way to make money and be a student, I would be signed up.
Yeah.
Because I love that. I loved learning. I loved going to school.
No, 100%. I mean, I have heard that from you several times, and I see firsthand the amount of reading that you do, just on all different topics, and that constant education and giving yourself knowledge that never know when it's going to come and in handy, but you can never have too much of that, and that's something I've always admired about you, is that your willingness to educate yourself beyond for the sake of doing it for a job but as a hobby is really kind of cool to see, because I'm the exact opposite, right? Like I try to read as little as possible and do things on more of a day-to-day sense. But it's probably why you win most arguments, because you have a lot more knowledge than I do on things. But,
or because I'm just right.
Or because you're just right. We could go with that too. Either one. That's true. I want to just go into a little bit about like our story, like when we met, right?
Okay.
Because it's about the same time.
Yes.
You drive up to San Jose. You're in your first couple of years of school. We meet in your third year of school, I believe, end of your third year, going into your fourth. I got to be honest with you. Like, what's your version of how we met?
Okay. So my version of how we met is that my roommates and I were having a party. It was a party to celebrate the San Jose State versus Stanford football game. We lived in a house where I had like 9 roommates. We were piled into this house that, the cheaper you could get your rent, you just kept putting people in this house.
You guys had like what, like
I think there were 10 or 11 of us living in this house. Anyway, a couple of my roommates were on the gymnastics team at San Jose State, and they invited a fellow gymnast who happened to be your roommate at the time. And so he invited you, and the two of you came to our party. I had heard some not pleasant stories about you from the gymnastics team. So we're having the party, and I come walking down the stairs because it's a 2-story house, and you approach me, and your first words to me was, "You are the prettiest thing I've ever seen, and I'm going to marry you one day." And my response was, "No, thank you. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
You're too big for me." What people probably can't tell is that I'm 5 foot tall, and Matt is 6'3". So there's quite a size difference between the two of us.
Right.
And you were like, "No." Well, let me back up. You had a sticker on your back.
Oh boy.
You had a sticker on your back.
Oh boy, here we go.
That said, "Warning, large penis." So
That was
when
false
I
advertisement,
said,
by the way.
so when I said "you're too big for me," you said, "If this is about the sign on my back, it's false advertisement. Don't be scared."
Yeah.
So I thought, no, ew, gross.
Yeah.
And I walked away. So that began an entire party of you constantly approaching me and constantly coming back and saying, I really think that, you need to get to know me and we should talk and, we should get to know. And I kept saying, no, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. Come to find out you're the person we hadn't heard the best things about.
Mm-hmm.
You were a little rough around the edges.
Yeah. A little rough.
Little crass. And you thought things were funny that maybe I didn't think were so funny, right. Especially being 21.
Yeah.
So anyway, our house was next door to a halfway house. And so our neighbors were some people who had some mental challenges. And one of the guys that was at our party was kind of harassing one of the neighbors, being a jerk, but, being a 21-year-old who probably had too much to drink at this party and was just being just rude.
Right.
So you walk over and you start kind of cussing the guy out and saying, like, what the hell's wrong with you? This person, doesn't know. You're treating this person as, as if they were a regular person. Like, you were disgusted. And you
I
let
believe
the
I told him
guy
to shut the fuck up or I was going to beat his ass.
Well,
Is what I said. Something along those lines.
Something along those lines. So I'm, watching this happen and I'm thinking, okay, like, maybe this guy's not so bad.
Right.
Maybe he's not so bad. Anybody who's willing to stand up for someone who lives in a halfway house that's being harassed by, a 21-year-old probably at least deserves a conversation.
Yeah.
So you come walking over after and you're like, hey, I have a proposition for you. If you give me 10 minutes of your time and you don't realize in 10 minutes that we were meant to be best friends, at least, at the very minimum, we were meant to be best friends, then I will leave you alone forever. Yeah. And I remember saying 10 minutes and then you'll leave me alone. And you said 10 minutes and we shook on it and here we are.
30 years later.
30 years later almost.
Now, if that's not
September.
A handshake and a smile story, I do not know what is.
That is.
And I remember every bit of that. Some of it, again, my 50-year-old self today is regretting some of the decision-making in terms of appearance and otherwise, as you described. But nonetheless, I think it was part of the, it's part of the story, right? At the end of the day, everybody has a story. And, the part of life is about growing and, maintaining the foundational things that should never be compromised. And, the story you tell of how we met not only is nostalgic, but it also has a lot of, I think, practical application, right? It's some of the messages that you mentioned are how we actually, raised our kids, right? Stand up for those that can't stand up for themselves. The difference between right and wrong, not compromising that, maintaining integrity, character. You can change your clothes, you can change your haircut, you can change, other things, how you talk, things like that. But some of those, you either have it or you don't, right? And I think that's it's always fun to hear our throwback story to when we met. And again, it aligns with what I thought. And my first impression of you was, as you said, I walked up and told you I was going to marry you. I thought you were the prettiest thing I've ever seen, and still think that today. So, I guess as we kind of progress down our path of being together, right? Like, we eventually, started dating and, moved pretty quickly in terms of, the commitment we had for each other. Kind of like a when you know type of thing. But I'm curious to know, from my side, I know it was, a love at first sight, and all the things I started to learn about you afterwards just made it, from things about you personally to, your family. I've always said how much I've fallen in love with your family, and my first trip down to visit, I was just the camaraderie and the Latin style of being together. It was some of the coolest experiences. I mean, I remember going, my first trip down, and it's like a Tuesday night, and it's us and your mom and your sister and grandma, and we're just sitting there casually talking. Phone rings. Who's over there? and I'll be there in 10 minutes. And somebody's pulling up with a Pollo Loco, and then phone rings again. And somebody, next thing you know, there's 20, 25 people there. And I didn't grow up that way. I grew up where you kind of had to have an appointment to go visit home, right? You know what I mean? Sometimes, but it was not as on the fly, right? Or spontaneous, which again, I was attracted to. But in looking back, like, what would you say was a point in our relationship where you thought, you know, this guy's different, right? Like where there was, you know, more there and you could start to see maybe a future, right? Like what point in the relationship, or at what point was it something I did, something I said, combination thereof, where you're like, this guy's different. I can, you know, see a potential life together.
I don't think that there was any one point. I think there was a combination of, you know, well, I mean, when we got together in 1996, when there were no cell phones and social media and all that kind of stuff, you really had to. Right? I wish we could go back to this. But anyway, people had to really get to know each other, right? You really had to tell a person, I'm going to call you at this time, and you're actually going to call at that time, and the person's going to have to be home and wait for the phone call, or I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to, you know, come visit you, or we're going to go out, or, you know, things like that. I think for me, like you said, you were so sure, so quick, and so, you know, that you kept saying, like, I'm not dating other people. I don't want to date other people. I'm in this. And I think when you've been dating and you've seen other people who are guys are constantly trying to date the next person and see what else is out there. And, you know, I was tired of that. And the fact that you were like, I'm set in what I want. We're not doing this. If you're dating other people, I don't want to continue this. I think it was good for me. It was good for me to hear somebody that was different, that wasn't trying to play the field and wasn't trying to see what other person was out there. And so I think your sureness helped me feel like I was sure, and not constantly questioning everything. Plus, there's a moment of, I can just be me. I can just be me, and this person has already fallen in love with who I am. I don't have to pretend to be anybody that I'm not. The more I'm myself, the more he likes me. And I think that's very attractive to a person who doesn't have to constantly pretend to be somebody they're not, or, oh gosh, if I say this, is he going to like it? Or if I don't say this, is he not going to like it? And as time went on, it's you continue doing what you say you're going to do, and you continue being the person that you say you are. And I think that makes a person fall in love a little bit more and more and more.
Right. Just keep stacking days.
That's it. It's just consistency. Right? There's a consistency. There's a consistency in, this is who I am. This is who I've told you I am. And, you know, being the person that when you see a person break down on the side of the road, and you're the first person to jump out of our car and push that person to the side of the road without being asked. You know, there was a lot of that, a lot of, oh, we're going to go visit your mom. Oh, what does she need? What help can I give? And it wasn't a monetary thing, because neither one of us had anything at that point.
We didn't have shit back then.
We didn't have anything. But just that constant wanting to help and constant wanting to be better.
Right.
I think that all came along. You know, I'm the first person to tell people, get past first impressions. I think, like you said, a person at 21 looks a certain way, or they dress a certain way, and you're kind of like, not really sure. Or I'm listening to what other people are saying about this person and not getting my own impression of that. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too, you know, you mentioned, I agree. I think consistency goes both ways, right? Like, again, there was no facade. I never felt like there was a facade. I certainly wasn't putting on a facade. I never felt the impression that you ever were at any point in time. You know, I look at today at how people date, even with our own kids, like how they date and stuff, and, you know, the rules and I mean, the fucking soft launch, hard launch, we're talking, we're this, we're that. It is like, you know, a gazillion different classifications. And, you know, back when we were doing our thing, it was like you said, like you couldn't rely on technology to be able to, well, two things. One, you couldn't hide behind technology. Like you really had to work the nerve to go up and talk to a girl, right? Like look them in the eye and be like, hey, you're hot, or hey, I'd like to date you, or whatever. Like you had to ask, right? There was something for that. Now, I mean, Christ's sake, you can be behind a text and, you know, have the same question to 10 different girls or guys or whatever, and you don't have to work that nerve up. And that's, you know, part of what the show is about is like, it's cool to have the technology to do these things. It's great, but keep some of those things that are personable, right? Like walk up to somebody, introduce yourself, you know, shake their hand, smile at them, talk to them, communicate. You know, and I think that, you know, we can have a good balance of both. And so I appreciate those days because, you know, good or bad, you know, I made some mistakes as well. Like I think I missed our first date,
Our first
official
yeah,
date
you stood me up.
at the Olive Garden by a total accident because I didn't have technology to remind me, right? I got my wires crossed, but I spent 30 years making up for it, I hope. But my point is that, you know, you're forced to communicate back then, right? Today, you're not as forced to do that. And I'd love to, you know, if there's one message that this show brings to people that watch it is, you know, challenge yourself to, you know, to look at some of the, you know, the moms and dads out there that come from that Gen X generation, even beyond that, the rules still apply, right? They can still hold merit. I want to jump in a little bit to like, you know, kind of the behind the scenes, like, you know, fast forward to today, right? Where we're 30 years together. We've been married for 27 here in July. We've built a wonderful life. We've built a family that I'm beyond proud of, you know, 2 beautiful kids, a home, and done it the right way, right? Like we didn't take any shortcuts. We, you know, stared adversity in the eye, challenged it, overcame it, got buried at times, but never threw in the towel. Always go forward, go forward, go forward. And I think that's really important for, you know, any generation to have that mentality. But like today, from a business perspective, and I want to set this off with like, you know how they say the word like the woman behind the man? Like that's a common theme, like somebody that's in business or whatever like that. And I don't like that, right? I think it's the woman beside the man. And then oftentimes it's the woman in front of the man, because in our case, many of the decisions that have been made at the business or entrepreneurial level for me have been as a result of late night pillow talks with you, asking questions, bouncing ideas, getting your perspective on things that, you know, you can't get from a business journal or from your colleague at work, right? Because a lot of times those opinions are skewed and they're, you know, but you had this like fresh perspective that, you know, helped me make a lot of decisions, you know, over the course of the years. So people see me as an entrepreneur, right? Like with the businesses that we have. If you were going to ask yourself, or, you know, ask the question, like, what's the one thing based on, you know, where we are today that they, you know, what people don't see about Matt, you know, in our relationship? What do they, you know, outside of everything that's very visible and public, like what do they don't see about me?
Well, that's hard. I think you wear your heart on your sleeve, so I don't think that there's probably very much that people don't see about you. You're not a super private person, so I think you're very open with everybody, and I think you really try to run the businesses as a family, you know? And so I don't know that there's that much that people don't see or don't know about you. I think that what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
What you see is what you get. And so I don't think that I don't know that there's that much that I would say, oh, people don't realize this about Matt.
Right.
You know, I think that most of your decisions you've made with, you know, your family and the kids and myself at the forefront. But I also think that there's a lot that maybe people don't realize, that you sit and think, okay, well, would this benefit this employee, and would this benefit that person? And there's so much that goes into, it's not just what benefits us,
right,
what benefits me.
right,
It's always been about what's the greater good, right?
100%.
And so I think, again, that's part of what keeps me going. I made the right decision 30 years ago. I made the right decision when I realized who this person was at their core, to go, this is who I'm spending my life with.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I know the question is tough, because you're right. I mean, when you build anything, especially businesses, sure, you want to accomplish financial goals. You want to achieve success. You want to scale. You want to grow. You want to do all these things. But, you're right. And a lot of what runs through my mind, especially when I lay my head down at night, is, it's the amount of people that we're responsible for, right? Like, it's not the four of us. It's thousands of people that we're responsible for their livelihoods, right? And the decisions that we make directly impact, their outcomes. And, some of the proudest moments for me have been to see those accomplishments that employees and teammates get to achieve because of being a part of our, businesses and whatnot. So I'll ask maybe a little bit more direct question. Over the course of, my career and our being together, is there a, proudest moment for you, or a time where you're like, wow, that's, I'm super proud to be a part of the business or part of the family? Like, is there a moment where, and it can be business related, it could be family related, it could be whatever, but.
Oh my gosh.
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah. To try to narrow down to proudest moment, I mean.
Or, a highlight.
There's a highlight. Yeah. There's been a lot of highlights. I think when you say you're going to do something, and in our relationship, you're the dreamer and I'm the realist. And it's almost always been that way. And where sometimes, you've cast me as the pessimist, well, it's not so much, exactly. It's not so much that's what it is. It's right. That there's also, you've always had very big plans and very big dreams. And that's great. That's great. And that's always been like an attractive quality that you have. At the same time, you're one person, so I think, it's a proud moment when you say, I'm going to do this, and then you've done it and you go, look, I did it, even though you had 75 other things on your plate. And, of course, I'm proud of you in those moments.
Right.
So there's so many of those. You said, working in college and working at a chicken restaurant, and you were like, these are the best wings, I'm going to own one of these one day. And then to open one is like, what a proud moment. Yeah. It's not about the money that you're making off of this restaurant. It's about the fact that this was your dream and this was your goal, and it's been done.
Right.
So there's a lot of proud moments, but for me, as your wife, it's not so much the business part that I'm proud of. I'm proud of the dad you are. I'm proud of the husband that you are. We said a long time ago that we would put each other first, and, people may agree or they may disagree, and our children second. Now, that's not to say that we're not caring for them, especially as infants, that we don't put their needs first. That's not what the message is, but to be able to look back at it through 27 years of marriage and feel like I was almost always, yes, the priority. You said that that's what it was going to be, and I am the priority. And so I think, I look back and I see the kind of dad you've been to the kids. And they're lucky. They're lucky, and I hope they don't take that for granted. And those are the moments that I'm the most proud. When, one of the kids calls you and says, hey, I'm struggling with this, with X, Y, Z, and you drop everything, whether you're in the middle of anything that has to do with business, and you handle that situation first. I'm more proud of that because I'm proud of the business, but
Right.
at the end of the day, you know, we're raising our kids the way we said we were going to raise our kids. And so
Right.
therefore the fact that they've always been a priority, or if I call you with, even if it's in my head a huge thing, you know,
Right.
there's a leak in the house, there's this, you
Right.
know, this little tiny situation that I think is a big thing, and you go, I'm on it,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's when I'm the most proud. I'm the most proud of the husband and the father that you've been,
Well, thank
more
you.
so than the businessman that you've
Right.
been.
Well, thank you. I think there's a lot of parallels between both, right? Like, life is about, in my opinion, it's about, setting priorities, not compromising on those priorities, and then, executing against, what is clear and present at the moment, right? And sometimes it's family, and then sometimes it's business. It's a combination of both. But yeah, going back to, our rule for each other of, us first. And the reason that is, it's not a selfish thing. It's that if we're intact, they'll be intact,
Yes.
right? And, I'll take it even one step further. In our early dating years, and leading into like when I asked you to marry me and before we got married, we also had another rule, and that was we don't believe in divorce, right? Come hell or high water, we're going to figure this thing out, right? And there are, I think, a few things like not going to bed angry was another one, right? Like the best we can, right? Sometimes you do. I mean, you hold grudges. I'm usually the apologizer, just for the audience to know. I think I've won maybe 3 or 4 arguments in 27, 30 years. Definitely less than a handful for sure. But that's because I've always believed that nothing is more important than our sanity as a unit, as a family, right? And so if that means I'm going to be wrong, and maybe I was, potentially right, I'm willing to sacrifice my own, stat sheet on that so that we can move on and move forward, right? That's always been important for me. And, those are our personality styles, right? Like I can let things in. It goes back to what you said, that, I've been the dreamer, I've been the risk taker. And I think that as I go into my next question here for you, like one of the biggest things that I've learned from you is to take a step back sometimes, right? It's fine to go 100 miles an hour, but make sure that you've looked left, you've looked right, you've looked front, you've looked back, and you've been my checks and balances. So that's been a huge learning point for me. And the second learning point that you brought to me, that at one point in my life, as I was a young entrepreneur and being groomed for management and whatnot, I remember taking a test, and it said my worst quality was delegation. Like I was terrible at it. I scored awful. And partly that's because, I think I felt or had the mindset that I'm the only one that can do this. I only trust myself, et cetera, et cetera. Because of you kind of, providing perspective and, teaching me to believe in others and believe in their capabilities, it's turned out today, fast forward to 50, to be one of my strongest assets. I always joke with like clients and prospects and people that we engage with, and I'm like, I'm not good at much, but the one thing I'm good at is I can build a team. I can build a team really well and lean into them and trust them and let them do what they're great at, right? And give them that autonomy. And that's been, over the last 15 years, probably, I would say, is where I've kind of mastered that trait. So that was 2 huge learning points for me. I'm going to ask you, what's one thing you've learned from me over the years?
Oh gosh, so much.
Or so little. You might have to dig for this.
No. I think that I've learned how to argue appropriately through you. I grew up that when you were angry, you went silent. And the person would know that you were angry because you weren't speaking to them. And you gave them the silent treatment. And it's probably the quality in me that you probably hated the most, especially in the early years. And I think really very early on, you were like, this is never going to work. If this is how we're going to fight, this is never going to work. if you have a problem, you have to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to talk about it. You have to say what the problem is. I'm not a mind reader. I will not know what I've done to upset you if
Right.
all you did was go silent. And I will never know not to do it again because I didn't know what I did wrong
Right.
to begin with. So I think I'm a better communicator because of you. I've definitely learned that you don't just shove something under the rug and, leave it be. You'll get over it. And then when the problem comes back again, you're just going to be much more pissed.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the major things I learned from you early on.
Mm-hmm.
I think in parenting, I've learned that not everything is the end of the world. Not everything is catastrophic. Luckily for our kids, you had a way of laughing things off and thinking that a lot of what I thought was, the sky is falling, he said a bad word, the sky is falling. You were like, okay, he said a bad word. Like, we're moving on, like, let's just say, we're not going to say that again and we're going to move on. So to not take everything so seriously all the time was probably one of the things that, luckily for our kids, you had. Because for me, the mom role was so important that, in the moment that I decided to stop going to a regular job and take on being a parent full time, it became very serious to me. And I think, luckily for me, to not take it so seriously. Yeah. Not every situation.
But to give you some, it's not easy being at home all day. I was traveling a ton. You know what I mean? Those kids will push your buttons, right? They will test your patience and they will do everything in between. So, there was merit to, your style. It's me. I was coming in on a Friday evening and being the weekend guy, until I had to go travel again on Monday.
The fun parent.
And be the fun parent, right? Yeah. So, but because of that balance, because of that, I think that's what has really, shaped our kids to what they are today. And they recognize that, right? Mm-hmm. Like, one of the coolest things I remember, I tell this all the time, being a stay-at-home parent doesn't just mean, cooking and putting them to bed and giving them a bath. You were super involved with their activities. Like, you were the PTA president for the elementary school for 7 years, 6 or 7 years. You were involved in, all of their, high school activities, et cetera. So it never really stopped from, elementary school, middle school, all the way to high school. And one of the coolest things, like when you look at like kids today, oftentimes kids, when they see their parent, mom or dad, on campus at school, cringe. And they're like, oh shit, my mom's here, my dad's here. And they kind of go the different direction, right? One of the proudest moments for me of you is seeing when you're because you're there and they are used to seeing you there and they yell out, hey mom, love you mom. Like that right there, like for people that don't know, is a testament to the type of home that you've built, but more importantly, the relationship that you created with the kids to have that comfort and be comfortable in their own skin. It's hard enough growing up as it is, but to be able to embrace your parent in a public environment like that at school at that age where maturity is super low is remarkable. So, that was always something that I admired.
Well, and I think stay-at-home moms don't always get the credit that they deserve, even from, I tell people all the time, and you're not quiet and shy to give me my flowers and my praises as a stay-at-home mom. There's never been a moment where you've made me feel like, hey, you should be out there making us money, right? Because you've always been like, there is no price tag on, the fact that you're raising our kids, and I can't put a price tag on that.
Right.
It wasn't just, raising the kids. It was like you said, keeping the house a certain way, making sure there's food on the table, making sure that the laundry's done. Every stay-at-home mom knows what that list looks like. And I think a lot of times it's taken for granted. Like you're just sitting at home hanging out with your kids, and there's 1,001 things that get done every day. And I've
For anybody that has a stay-at-home parent and they're in the situation where they don't quite understand, what that significant other does, I would challenge that they spend a day in the life or 2 days in the life of that job and see how quick they either acknowledge it or can't wait to get back to what they do on a day-to-day basis, because and that's something that I think we experienced is I had a couple of days where I had to cover for you, and I was like, holy shit, like there's a lot that's to this, you know what I mean? And it's not just
You didn't even do the laundry that
no,
weekend.
and I didn't do half the stuff. No,
It.
I didn't do any of it.
You
No,
didn't shop.
no, there's no way I could have done that. So,
Well, I think your exact words were, if I had to do this every day, these kids would be in daycare.
For sure, 100%. And so, I think that's going back to, the whole handshake and a smile approach is, again, this isn't about going backwards, right? It's not about, mom should be at home or dad. It's about what works for each family.
Yes.
And when decisions are made and it's the right choice for that family, that the partnership of mom and dad or, parents, co-parent, whatever it is, there's a mutual respect there and an appreciation for what each individual brings to the table. Because, without you doing what you did, I couldn't have created the success that we created. And so it needs to be celebrated. And I think it needs to be, at minimum, if it's not celebrated, it needs to be recognized. And I think there's, the world we live in where divorce is 1 in 2, a lot of that has to do with some of the things we talked about today, communication, right? Learning how to communicate, respecting what each person brings to the table, what they do for the family. And that's, something that you've done really, really well for our family, and I wouldn't have changed a thing at all. I want to move into just kind of a little bit about, when we, this program is about, building businesses, it's about building families, it's about, overcoming failure and using tools from the past and the present and, representing yourself in a way that can overcome or grow the things that are important, business, family, et cetera. When you look at marriages, it all starts at marriage, right? Like that, in terms of a family, usually marriage is what is the starting point. But, today's world, what do you think the biggest misconception is of a successful marriage? Like in terms of, how people classify, you sit at a barbecue and there's other couples and families or whatever like that. And they're like, yeah, I have a great marriage. You know what I mean? When reality is that on the surface it might be, you know what I mean? But some of the things that are the nuts and bolts of a relationship, we kind of from a distance know they're not intact, right? So I'm curious from your perspective, when you interact or engage with people that, kind of build the facade of I have a great marriage. Like what do you think are misconceptions in defining success of a marriage?
The misconceptions of defining the success of a marriage. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've discussed communication. I always think communication is at the top of the list. You and I have discussed loyalty, and I think within loyalty comes like honesty and, your commitment to this one person. Growing up in a family where, because we were Nicaraguan and a lot of that older generation of Nicaraguans, it was very common to not be faithful to your spouse, right, especially for the men, right? Growing up and hearing from my grandmother that was just the way that it was, and that, she was still the wife, and that was things she had to put up with. Mm-hmm. I remember saying to you from very early on, like, this is not something I can get on board with, mm-hmm, and I will not be able to just turn a blind, right, turn an eye to it, turn the cheek. So I think a lot of times when people aren't being honest, they're not being faithful, mm-hmm, they're not communicating why they strayed, why, mm-hmm, I think that has some issues.
Do you think that that's like when you look at we've talked about, the history of, like you said, your family. Do you think that that is generational? Like, is it generational? Is it cultural? Maybe a combination of both? I mean,
It's hard to say because I look at it as a generational cultural thing because that was my grandfather's, generation, and kind of came down to some of my uncle's generation,
Right.
so to speak, my mom's generation. But I don't live in Nicaragua anymore,
Right.
and while I have family there and I'm proud to be Nicaraguan, I
Right.
don't really know what happens this day and age. I don't really know what's acceptable, what people still are doing or not doing. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing
Yeah.
necessarily, but I hear about, people who are of Mexican descent, of Guatemalan descent, of Costa Rican descent. Like, it does seem to be a Hispanic, Latino, generational, cultural thing that's kind of what the men did. So I'm not really.
It was important for you to not to course correct and not. That's not what you saw for your life or wanted for your life.
Not at all.
Right.
Not at all. So yeah, like we said, we learn to communicate. We know we're trying to be as honest with each other as possible. Sometimes you gotta, sometimes you don't have to say
your shopping
everything.
list sometimes is got to be swept under the carpet.
Little things.
Right.
But for the most part, to remember that you and I are on the same team, right? Like, we're on the same team. I'm not trying to, be against you, and you're not trying to be against me and pit us against each other,
right.
Which.
Well, I've always said, outside of your beauty, which is, something I've always been attracted to, the number one, you're the most loyal person I've ever met. Hands down. Like, say what you're going to, do what you're going to say. You go when you say you commit to something, like, and almost to a fault in some cases, right? I think your nickname is Switzerland, right? I believe I heard that once or twice. So you have the ability to see the gray in a lot of situations, right? And then not pass judgment, not make an opinion until you've been able to hear both sides. Because I think we say, right, there's a story here, there's a story there, and somewhere in the middle lies the truth. You're really good at making sure that you hear enough, see enough to be able to find where that truth lies. And so, loyalty is just a byproduct of who you are. And again, it's the most attractive part of you outside of the physical that, I know I don't question for a second. I hope that's the same for you with me. And it's the foundational things, again, going back to, old school, like, this is something that should, anybody that's seeking a relationship, whoever you want to be with, these are things that, at one point were more evident and have slipped. And, does technology have responsibility for that? Yeah, in some cases. I mean, there was no swipe right, swipe left, or whatever the fuck it is, when we were, getting together. And, you see the stories, today, it's so easy just to, get off track and, like, loyalty's out the window. You know what I mean? Like, marriage in my mind is a partnership, right? It's no different than a business. It's just you sleep in a bed together, right? And all the other things have applications, right? Trust and communication and loyalty and all these things. And, outside of any business accomplishment I've had, being able to go to bed at night knowing that loyalty is there is the most peaceful way to live life in my mind. You know what I mean? Because, you just can't substitute that. So I appreciate that from you, and we'll always, those aren't flowers. Those are just, like, those are, who you are and who you've been. When we talk about, marriage, we look at, like, you said something earlier on about, don't sweat the small stuff, so to speak, right? Like, it's not that big of a deal. The toys aren't put away, or, whatever it was. If you're giving advice to, couples today, like, what's something couples in marriages or otherwise should stop worrying about, like, that you think is, end all be all, but at the end of the day, if you were giving advice, like what's something you think that they should, not worry about or is not a big of a deal?
Oh gosh. I think we live in an age where the appearance of everything is so important. And I think, getting the right picture for the gram and getting the right this for the post and getting the right,
Right.
The kid isn't wearing the right outfit. And I'm the first one who will say, the kids had to match. They had to look clean.
Yeah.
And that wasn't about what I was posting, because we weren't posting anything really, at the time. It was more about, I just don't like dirty kids.
Right.
And
I don't think there was posting at that time, was there?
I mean, I don't know, when did Facebook come out?
Facebook,
I don't know. Anyway.
It wasn't like it is today, no.
No, but I think some of that is the small stuff. You're looking at, we're always comparing ourselves to other people, right? You're looking at what this person posted and what they're doing for their summer vacation and what they're taking their kids to do, or what
it's like the modern version of keeping up with the Joneses.
But you're keeping up with 7 million Joneses every time you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and and it's when you continue to just constantly be comparing your relationship, and oh my gosh, they got 5 dozen roses for Valentine's Day, but I only got a single rose. Stop comparing what everybody else is doing to what you've got going on in your home. I think that's definitely something that this generation and this day and age is struggling with.
Are you saying then, because in business we have a term, what's called economies of scale, right? And what that means is, you have different valuations. People bring different, valuations of what can and can't happen at a given point, right? So for example, from a business perspective, you may be a Fortune 50 company like, Microsoft, and then you may be a mom and pop shop. It's clearly the budgets that the mom and pop versus a Fortune 50 doesn't have. So there are limitations at what you can do to compete or to be at the same level. Same thing kind of applies in families, right? Like, or relationships where, you may be a middle-class family or you may be a wealthy family, right? It doesn't mean some of the things that are important, like, instead of comparing to what that upper tier has and what that husband or wife did for their significant other, focus on what's meaningful towards yours, because at the end of the day, it's about the message behind it, right? It's the time you took, it's the thought you put in, it's the effort, right? And oftentimes that gets overshadowed because, the price tag of the gift or the price tag of the vacation or the picture that, is that what you're kind of alluding to?
Pretty much. Yeah. It's just, I think there's a lot of fake out there. I think there's a lot of fake out there, and you're looking at a person's picture and you're thinking, I need that. If my life was like that, if our family was like that, if my husband was like that, if our kids were like that, and there's so much trying to achieve that for that person, it's not even real. Yeah. They posted their best shot, but they may have taken 2,000 pictures. Yeah. And, but really, they walked away from the picture and nobody spoke to each other, and everybody, everybody's kid got on an electronic, and everybody, it's an appearance. And I think we're all trying to chase this thing that for half those people who post it doesn't even really exist. Right.
No, I agree 100%. And there's a lot of, I think, false positives in the world of social media today. And again, pointing out some of the defects of technology and social media is not, there's a lot of great things about it too, right? Course. Keeping families connected.
Yes.
You can't get in front of that. Those are great tools to have. I think it goes to the other side of, like, if you abuse it for the wrong reasons or your intentions are not right, then, these are the things that you're talking about. But I think like it's the grass is greener type of mentality. It's not always the case. More often than not, it's not. And looking at what somebody else has. I mean, I remember hearing from my family growing up. Like, my mom used to say this all the time. She would say, "Just thank God for a normal day. Thank God for a normal Monday. You get up, you can go do what you do. you know, you're healthy, you're walking around, you're moving around, right? Like that's at the end of the day, because you don't begin to appreciate that until you don't have it. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as you don't have it, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like then, so that's something that, you know, I know we've talked about together, like just thank God for a normal day. You know what I mean? Everything else doesn't mean shit. Interesting. I think that, you know, out of everything I've heard today so far, I mean, I'd really like to hear, you know, some advice that you could share, you know, like what's a best piece of advice that you've ever received that you think would be good for the audience to hear? And it can be on any topic. It doesn't have to be, you know, whatever, but like, is there a piece of advice you got, you know, from your mom, from, you know, family, like that would be good for somebody else to hear?
Oh my gosh, I've gotten so much advice.
Or a couple of different things. Yeah.
Let's see. Like I said, I think I constantly am talking about getting past first impressions with people. You know, I think you don't judge a book by its cover. Mm-hmm. And I think that's always been one of my, when I go into a friendship, when I go into, you know, any kind of relationship, it's to get past the appearance of a person mm-hmm. or, you know, whatever, and really get to know the person. Right. There's been a lot of my friends that I have right now that are very, very good friends to me. You know, I've had people say to me, oh, you hang out with her? She's always so serious, you know? And I'm like, what, serious? She's one of the funniest people, you know, quick-witted people I've ever been around. Like, I don't see her that way. Right. But, you know, we all have our, I don't want to say mask that we wear, but like what people see in us. And it's not always who we are. Right. It's just what people are seeing. So I think just in general in life, that's one of my big things is to try to get past. And I am also, like you said, you know, I'm a very devil's advocate person. Mm-hmm. And no matter what, even to this day, if the kids come to me with like, this happened or that happened, and I always, you know, say to them, well, okay, so on the flip side of that, right. you know, what was the other person thinking? What role did you play in that person making that comment right. or feeling that way? It's not always fun for the kids. Mm-hmm. It's not always fun for you, for me to be devil's advocate, or people in general. But I think, you know, a lot of my friends will say to me, hey, was I an asshole? Mm-hmm. You know, did I see right. this situation in a bad, I'm not seeing the other side. Right. Help me to see the other side. Yeah. You know, and I'm constantly trying to be the gray area, okay, let's look at it from another perspective, because when we all start seeing things from only one way, it's impossible. Right. Life isn't about only your right. way of thinking right. or my way of thinking. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to see both sides mm-hmm. to a story, or you're going to miss out on a lot of things in life. And I think those are my main constant everyday kind of points that I think have served me well.
Yeah, it's great advice. I mean, I think, you know, processing things before you respond sometimes. I think, you know, if I'm summing up what you're saying, it's almost like listen before react, right? Like listen, you know, don't be so quick to you know, form an opinion off of a first impression or a first comment. Give it a little bit of time, maybe understand perspective of where that comment or that person's coming from. Almost like benefit of the doubt a little bit, right? Like give a little bit, you know, don't just like jump to, I think that's important. You know, one of the things, you know, in business that we do here, like with our companies is, you know, we teach people to listen first, respond second. A lot of times people are so quick to want to hear themselves talk or respond with an answer that they know that they're just, it's in the chamber, they're ready to get it out. But that response may not be answering what the person needs, right? Like, so same thing goes in relationships like we're talking about. I think it's really strong advice. I want you to think for a second and think of one failure in your life that wound up being a blessing. like becoming a blessing, like a blessing in disguise moment? And this can go as far back as you want. Maybe something.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I see it as a failure. I think
or missed opportunity.
Sure.
You know, something that's, you know, you're like,
I think,
really,
like
really
I said earlier about my my professional goals, right? And that my professional goal was to go on to get a master's and possibly even a PhD and be able to be, you know, a therapist, a licensed therapist, and that was my big goal. And I don't know that I see it as a failure that I didn't go back and continue. I mean, you and I know the story that like I finished my bachelor's, but you were still finishing, so I jumped into work, and you then finished your bachelor's.
Right.
And the plan was, okay, you're done with your bachelor's. I will jump back into school and get my master's, and then when I finish my master's, you'll jump back in and you'll do your master's. And we were kind of gonna. The plan was to take these turns, but the plan didn't work out to be the plan. The reality was, okay, I finished and I was working, you know, to put you through the rest of school. And then you kind of came and said, hey, look, I'm in it. I'm in the mindset of school. Can I jump into my master's first? And, you know, then you'll jump in. And I thought, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But by the time it was time for me to jump back in, we had our son.
Right.
And it became more of a priority to stay home and raise him than to go back and get a master's degree. And I think that's probably, I don't know that it's a failure, but a little bit more of a missed opportunity that ended up being a huge blessing, because I can't put a price tag on the fact that I stayed home. And, you know, like you said, it's not the best choice for everyone. And I admire everyone and their choices that they made. But for me, I'm glad that I did that instead of putting, you know, having a kid to the side for a little bit and pausing and jumping into school. Yeah. So maybe that's my big missed opportunity that I think was really a blessing, because I'm happy with the way things turned out.
Turned out good. I agree 100%. If you could shake hands with anybody, living or dead or gone, who would it be?
Wow. Shake hands with anybody. Oh gosh.
It's a tough one, huh?
It is a tough one.
Yeah.
Should have told me this before we came here. Then I would have had a good answer. I would have had a good answer.
Yeah. I'll let you think on that one real quick.
Living or dead.
We'll come back to that.
Okay.
What's one value in your mind that you would never compromise? And I think you already touched on this earlier, but I want to make sure we circle back to it. What's one value that you'll never compromise?
I will never compromise faithfulness. I will just, it's a completely, like, never.
Non-negotiable.
Yeah. Non-negotiable. I think the minute that you start inviting other people into our relationship, and because we've said that our marriage is number one to us, that's why it's probably the number one value. I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could, just because I think it extends to so much in who we are to each other, as far as our loyalty to each other. Right. That I feel like we would just be inviting something into our lives that isn't really what we've based our relationship on.
100%. I couldn't agree more. You think back to who you'd want to shake hands with? I got a few ideas just knowing you.
I mean, okay, so there's so many different ways this could go. Right. Because
it could be a celebrity. It could be anybody. Yeah. It could be somebody in your life that you never met.
No. I mean, you have to, like, imagine that, you know, I don't know, as a Hispanic, I would be like, Celia Cruz would be really cool to, like, shake hands with her. She's like, you know, an icon. Yeah. And people probably wouldn't even have guessed something like that as my answer. But then, you know, you also think back to, like,
For those of you who don't know, Celia Cruz is a famous Latin artist that if you've ever been on a dance floor, you've probably heard several of her songs. Of her hits.
Yeah. But then, I don't know. I would love to sit down in a room with Freud and be like, dude, where did this all come from?
That's where I was
something
thinking.
like a professional, like of a more professional. It's just because, it's like the foundation of psychology. And because I have such a rooted interest in it.
Right. That's where I was leaning towards, is it when I asked that question, that you would have mentioned, somebody like that was initially part of your dream of going to school and what you wanted to study. To hear, because what a cool experience that would be if you could understand what he was saying, right? Because I certainly have a hard time with it. But,
well, that's it. There would be so many questions there.
For
where
sure.
that all came from. But but then you think of your personal life, and I'm like, if I could have my grandma back for a day, and
it's hard.
Not just shake her hand, but
give her a hug.
Yeah.
Sure.
I would. Take that in an instant.
Absolutely. No, I think that the question is, more about, somebody you've never had a engagement with or a handshake with, but I say the same thing. If that question was answered to me, I'd love to see, my Nani and Nana one more time. You know what I mean? No question. Hands, I'd give anything for that. Any amount of money.
Yeah.
So last thing, I want you to finish this sentence. A great life is built by what?
A great life is
built by what, in your opinion?
By love. I think, love, I'm not just saying love from a significant other, but, love from your mom, love from your parents, love from your children, love from your friends, in any family. I think that if you feel loved and you've loved somebody or people or a lot of people, you're lucky.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Lucky.
I mean, what's that saying? Lucky in love? But it's not just lucky in love. Like, no. I agree with you. Receiving love, the whole world should revolve around that, right? Like receiving, giving love. It goes back to like how you treat people, right? How you would want to be treated. I think that's again, tying this back to some of the old school, type of mentality is, thinking about, what you want should be what you directly give to others. And if you have love at the forefront, I think that's a great starting point, a great center point to be able to live a great life. This has been awesome for me, to be able to interview you. I get to interview you every day. I'm lucky, but, I'm so honored that you took the time to sit with us here. The first episode of this, I again wanted it to be, a way for our audience to get to know not just myself, but us and who's the woman beside me. And like I said, in front of me in many cases. And it's just been a really good time hearing your perspective. And I think it gives us a really good understanding of the direction of this show, right? Like the most important handshake in my life was yours, and it will always be. No matter what business transaction we do or otherwise, your handshake, your smile was the most important in my life. And I thank you for that. And I love you for that. So this has been awesome. Thank you for spending the afternoon with us. For our audience, I just want to share with you, keep your handshakes firm, keep your smiles genuine, and your word even stronger. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone. If you liked what you heard today and saw, please subscribe, hit the bell, like, and comment. I'd love to hear what handshake changed your life. And if there are any guests that you'd love for us to have on this show, please comment, and we'll try to see what we can do to get them here. Thanks so much.